Hey everyone, welcome back to the Abom79 podcast. I'm your host Adam Booth.
And your co-host, Abby Booth.
This is our second attempt at recording this episode.
Sure is.
We thought we were going to have a nice casual outside recording because we have currently been doing some camping during the Labor Day holiday, and we were thinking it would be really nice to do one outside, kind of like one of our patio chats on Adventure Channel. And as soon as we started recording, we were bragging about how nice and quiet and peaceful it is, and it is there where we're camping. Is that as soon as that moment began with our podcast, there was airplanes flying in circles next to us. There was like 4 of them out there flying in circles. And then we heard our very first fire truck in the distance. That was the first one we've heard, during the whole weekend. And it just seemed like it was too intrusive for the podcast, too much noise in the background, and we decided, you know what, let's just stop because it was distracting.
It was extremely distracting. And it's hilarious because it happens all the time to you. You hit that button,
Yep.
and all of a sudden, all the noise.
Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of known that we joke about every time I'm ready to hit the shutter button on a camera, there's usually a weed whacker next to us, or a lawnmower, or a helicopter, or a siren.
I don't really know if we've ever recorded a video outside that wasn't full of some type of noise.
Oh, we've had a few good ones, and
Okay.
they're pretty rare.
Okay, yeah.
Because even when we think we're going to get a nice quiet recording at camp, nope. That's usually when the lawnmower shows up and cuts the grass on the other side of our camper there.
And then they spend 45 minutes just right there right.
Yeah. Yeah, we had talked about that before in a patio chat, I believe, and it was funny because it was like 7:30 in the morning, and they were right outside of our camper.
I was eating a bowl of cereal, just enjoying myself, just vibing.
I was trying to
And
drink.
then there was grass hitting my feet.
I was trying to drink my coffee, and the guy had to be right there, right in front of us.
We're used to it.
He saw us sitting there drinking coffee
He
and
did.
you eating cereal, and he didn't care. He was slinging grass on us, but that's just
He was doing his job,
All we can do is laugh about it. But we were excited about trying to have like an outdoor episode there and enjoy the great outdoors and a change of scenery. But we're back here in the podcast room, and we're going to do it here. I believe it was the last episode, we showed the podcast room for the first time. And it seemed like you had a really great response over the way that you decorated the room.
We did, and for good reason. I think a lot of people listening to this, watching this, they have a lot of these things in their own collections. And probably a few things they didn't know they needed.
Right.
But now they'll be looking for them.
Oh, yeah. We got some new items that people said they're going to be looking for to collect.
I have never wanted to go antiquing more in my life than right now because we've been doing all this, and now I'm like, I got the bug going.
Yep.
So I'm going to have to accommodate that. There's a new one near us that we haven't been to yet. I don't know if they're going to have anything machining related, but we got to try it.
They probably won't have much
Probably not.
for tools and machinist related.
But you don't know that.
And that's the common case whenever we are antiquing, because there's usually very little when it comes to manufacturing, machine shop tooling, literature, books. So that's why it's kind of fun to seek out those items, because they are super rare in the antique store or the flea market or whatever.
We've actually been talking about renting one of those antique booths.
Yeah.
Because we, have some surplus things that we'd like to sell, and we're probably going to be putting some things on eBay. But I think it would be cool. I've always wanted to have a little booth, so maybe we'll do that. I don't have time to do all the things that I have now, so when am I going to squeeze that in? But yeah, you know what? Might as well add one more thing. I think that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, all it is time management, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Well, anyway, we wanted to go ahead and record another podcast and talk a little bit about the previous job that we recently showed on the channel, and Abby wanted to touch on that a little bit as well.
Yeah, I actually have a confession to make.
Lay it on.
Okay, so I have been helping Adam record for several years now, and I absolutely love doing it. Obviously, I've learned a lot about filming and about machining. And I am, and have always been, kind of a safety queen. You know, I know what's right and what's wrong and what I need to do. I had probably my worst blunder, and I just thought that I would admit it on the podcast. So if you guys have been following Adam's videos, I don't know when it was, but it was when we were doing the flex arm, when we were not doing anything. Adam was doing the flex arm, and he asked me if I'd come help him film. Absolutely, I would love to.
It was it was just a couple videos back where we were threading the 304 stainless steel 3/4 inch rods. It was that video.
That's right. And obviously I got a lot of footage. I had all my safety stuff on. And then, because normally when he does the flex arm, it's close to the table. It's at, so it's at that height. And so I'm getting close, and that's the kind of footage that I usually get for that. But this one was different because it was higher in the table.
Yep. And you're basically upside down, because that was the first time that I was threading a rod where you're using a die. And so you kind of had to look up to be able to see the cut.
I was able to look up, is how I look at it. So yeah. I was like, yes, this is going to be a killer shot. I have got to get this. So I get down in there. I'm ready. We hit go. Here we go. It is the most beautiful shot. And all of a sudden I realize I do not have on my safety glasses. I'm the closest to this thing as I should be, or shouldn't be, I guess. I'm getting this great shot, and I am absolutely engaging those safety squints like you've never seen.
Safety
I had
squints.
one eye closed, one eye kind of open a little, and I'm like, please don't hit my eye, Chip. Please don't hit my eye. It was the most ridiculous thing that I've ever done. And he did not notice, and I didn't say anything because the shot was beautiful. So I was hoping, because again, my eyes were...
I was focused on watching the cut, watching the die do its job. And I know you were right there, because this was a purpose built-in shot that we were trying to get for the video, to get a really nice, clear, close-up shot of the threading. And I didn't notice that you didn't have your safety glasses on. So it was full safety squints engaged at that point.
It was.
And on top of that, what kind of footwear did you have on?
So I had on shorts, not advised. I know better. I also had on my OSHA-approved open-toed sandals in the shot, because I just threw them on thinking, oh, this isn't going to be a problem.
Yeah.
I got chips hitting my feet.
Yeah.
They're sizzling through the shoe. It was all the things that you don't do.
I was
in
listening.
One shot.
I was listening to her skin sizzle. The chips are falling over on her. They've got Molly D on them. Mm-hmm. Her eyes are like this because she doesn't want to get popped in the eyeball with a chip.
Yeah, I wish that we had it. Like, we should have just kept filming, because it was hilarious. Because we were laughing, because I was like, I had to safety squint. I just had to safety squint. Yeah, it was not great. It wasn't my best moment. I've learned a lot, but this is the most ironic thing. I have been reading a machinist book, and I just got through the safety section. So I know better.
Yeah.
But now I feel like it means even more to me, because I did all the things that you shouldn't do. I did not have the necktie on, the photo that was wrapped in the lathe. Yeah. So I'm not going to do that. But I'm also probably never going to go into the shop without my safety glasses.
I just want to say that we are very safety minded in the shop, so I don't want this to sound like we're just complete morons and don't know basic safety, because we do. I've been wearing my safety glasses for years and years and years. I got better at it as I got older, and realizing that there's a lot of things that can hit you in the eye, not just when you're running a lathe in a mill, but when you're using hammers and any kind of striking tools, doing any kind of bench work whatsoever. It's always best practice just to have your safety glasses on, because you only have two eyes. Those are the only ones you're ever going to have, and you need to protect them. And nobody wants to have to go to the eye doctor and have them start picking things out of your eyeball. That's not fun.
No,
so,
that makes me want to throw up.
So just think about that, and tell yourself, I would rather put on these clear glasses that are a little inconvenient versus having something messed up my eyeball.
But I think what's so weird about it is that you and I both are full of safety. We understand what we have to do to be safe. Whoops. So anyway, it happens to the best of us, I guess.
It
Lesson
happens,
learned.
and that's how you learn lessons in the shop too. So you had that little incident. It wasn't because you didn't care. It was a simple mistake because you were trying to get that shot.
I was.
And you forgot to put them back on, and you can. Fortunately, it was just a good learning lesson. Nobody was hurt. Nobody was injured.
No.
And you can tell the story to try to spread that message to everyone listening and everyone that's trying to learn this trade.
Do you think that most machinists have probably had to engage their safety squints at one time or another?
Guaranteed, everyone.
Yeah.
Everyone has, and I
Because
think
usually they're sitting right here on top of your head.
yeah,
You know.
yeah. For me, they usually are because I just don't like wearing them all the time, and so I usually take them off and put them on my hat, But we do keep them, like at the new shop, we have that black toolbox that's right by the office door. And so we keep all of our safety glasses up there so that when we walk out into the shop, especially Abby, when I ask her, I'm like, hey, will you come and help me get a shot of this job? She knows exactly what to do. She reaches up there and grabs her glasses. Her gloves are up there if she needs those as well.
My ear protection.
Yep. So
Come on, Dad.
we do try to practice safety, and we want everybody to take that serious. It was just, we were fortunate that we can kind of laugh about this because it was funny at the moment.
It was.
You get Molly D all over you.
Yep.
Open
Chips
toe
hitting
sandals,
hitting my toe.
short shorts.
I deserved everything I got. I did. I won't do it again. I have my Brunts. I have been wearing them in the shop. I love them. They're great boots.
Yeah.
And I just know better. I always wear my pants for the same reason. Honestly, that I thought that when I got into this, that the thing that I was afraid of the most, other than hitting the cutter while it's moving, which obviously that's very scary.
That's terrifying to
It
think
is.
about that.
It is. But I thought that it was going to be the chips hitting me. And I haven't had any like you have had. Like you had one that hit your
The bridge of my nose.
it hit inside his safety glasses and
It
he
went-
had them on.
It
and
went between the bill of my hat, right here,
Yeah.
and it fell right in and landed on the bridge of my nose, and my safety glasses are what stopped it right there, and it was just burning into my skin, and you cannot move fast enough to get those things off of you before they burn your skin. That's how hot they are.
Yeah.
So I had this dark spot right here on my nose for like a week because of, and I've had that happen many times. If you have one, it always happened like the day before that you knew you were going to go out with all your friends on a Friday night down to the
Absolutely.
club. You'd have one pop up and hit you on your lip right here.
Yeah.
And you have this big old red mark from a chip burning your lip. And then you go out and
everyone's
you're
staring
dressed
at
up
it.
looking good, and all of a sudden you have this thing on your lip, and everybody's looking at you like, what happened to you? What is that? A chip hit me. What do you mean a chip hit you? So anyway, it's important to practice safety, and since we're talking about safety, I also want to touch on hearing protection as well. I can vouch for the importance of protecting your hearing beginning with a young age. If you guys are young and you're just starting out in the shop, you have great hearing. You're not going to be hearing what it is that I'm hearing right now. I have the ringing of the ears, and I firmly blame it on the lack of hearing protection and all of the loud noises that I've had to endure in the shop over the years. And what I mean by loud noises is grinders. I had to do a lot of grinding. So when you're using a grinding and you're grinding metal, grinding welds, it's super loud. And when you're younger, you just feel like I can take all this. It's not a big deal. It's not bothering me. It doesn't hurt me. It doesn't hurt you until later on in life that it starts bothering you. And I try to get that message out. Like, protect your hearing while you can. Anytime you're going to be using power tools, like even something like a circular saw, a hand drill. Hand drills are super loud. Those little the drill motors. Anything you do that's gonna be loud, put your hearing protection on. And I like those little orange ones. You probably seen me use them in the videos. I particularly like those because I can just kind of hang them in my ears when I don't want to plug my ears. I just hang them there. But I also like the over-the-ear muffs as well because those work really well. But please protect your hearing. You're going to hopefully thank yourself later in life when you still have really great hearing. You don't have hearing loss, and you're not hearing the ringing of the ears. The other thing that I was going to mention about loud noises is that anytime you're hammering something, you're just using a hammer and you're hitting something, that loud pinging noise, it rings my ears. So that was one of the noises that we heard often in the shop, and on the daily basis, somebody was using a hammer. I was, or somebody by me would be hitting something with a hammer. And that loud screeching noise has, I think, damaged my hearing. So if you're using a hammer, put your hearing protection in. Was just trying to be helpful and help you guys out that are still young and learning the trade.
I do hope you laughed at the safety squints thing, because we cracked up. We thought it was the funniest thing. It really was very funny.
I'm glad that we were able to laugh about that.
Agreed.
And also share that story to help others as well.
Yeah.
So we had a good time in the shop. We had fun with that little job, and it was that particular job that prompted some more discussions that we wanted to talk about, or at least I did. Talk about threading. I think this would be a good way to kind of recap some of the work that we have shared in some videos is on the podcast here. So let's talk about some threading.
Let's do.
Yep. You want me to go ahead and jump right in?
I think you should. Please do.
All right. So the previous video that we were discussing, we were using the big flex arm to cut some 3/4 inch diameter stainless steel bar stock. That was a job we did for the fab shop. They just needed one end of the rod threaded, an inch length of threads. And so that was a 3/4 10 thread. And we were using, that was the first time that I used a thread die on the flex arm to cut an external thread. And I had posted it online and I said, doing some thread chasing. And I realized that was probably going to spark a little bit of controversy out there in the terminology that I was using. And it did. It had some people ask, well, why are you calling it thread chasing? Because, isn't it called this, or aren't you doing this instead of thread chasing? So let's just talk a little bit about threading in general. There's lots of different types of threading operations, depending on whether it's ID or OD, and whether you're on a lathe or on a milling machine. You know what I mean? You're hand threading something. So let's talk about a few different ways that you can thread. And I thought that this would be a perfect opportunity to use this little book that Abby rediscovered that was in my toolbox.
My new best friend.
Yep. This is the Dictionary of Metalworking Terms.
I will have it with me now forever.
Yep.
Because I've used it a lot already.
You see we got some flags in there. This was for me for today's discussion on threading. And again, this was a gift that was given to me by Mike, who used to work with my dad and I at Booth Machine Shop. I'll never forget, he handed it to me. He said, don't ever think I didn't give you anything. He gave me this right here. It's even got his
Thanks, Mike.
It's even got his initials there in the top.
I like that.
So this is a great book, and it's written by Gerald W. Caldwell. And I was going to point out too, this foreword in here, on the couple pages in, is by Harry Marshall, and he was talking about Mr. Caldwell here. And Harry Marshall was the managing editor for Modern Machine Shop. I thought that was pretty cool.
That is cool.
I don't know how old this book is. I did not see a date. But anyway, this is a really cool book. So if you guys are doing some searching, it doesn't have to be this one. Maybe there's another book. Maybe there's newer editions.
Honestly, now I want to look.
This would be helpful right there. Abby's going to look up and see if there's anything out there. And so the great thing about this book is that in the machine shop, we always throw out some terms that not a lot of people are aware of, or maybe they haven't heard it because they haven't been working in a machine shop. We do have a lot of custom terms for all of the different types of tools and processes that take place in the shop and on the machines. And so going back to the threading that I was talking about, I called it thread chasing whenever I was cutting those 3/4 inch bars. And the reason that I called them thread chasing is because that particular type of threading can also be considered thread chasing. And it also goes into the one of the styles of threading, which is the geometric die head. If Abby will reach behind her right there with that tool with the little red knob on it, yep, that right there, this right here is a geometric die head. And these geometric die heads come with 4 threading dies, if you will, but they're actually called chasers. So whenever you buy a set of these dies, they're actually called thread chasers. And whenever you're using this tool, it can be considered thread chasing, but it's a little confusing because most people think chasing is only when you're lining up with an existing thread and you're cleaning up a thread, like I've done many times in the lathe, where you have a damaged thread and you put it in the lathe and you have to line your tool up and you're cleaning that thread up to bring it back to its proper form. That's what most people think of thread chasing, and that is correct. We all call it thread chasing. But these right here on this geometric die head are thread chasers as well. And so you can consider this process, when you're using the geometric die head, thread chasing. And that was the reason why I called it thread chasing, even though a lot of people probably are not going to agree with me on that, and that's okay. I wanted to use this book here, Metalwork in Terms, and let's see what the book says on some of these terms that we consider in the shop there. So let me just go ahead. I don't remember which order they were all in. I think we're going to start with chasers. So let me see. Actually, we're going to start. You can see I've got a couple flags in here.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to start with chase, because I'm talking about chasing threads, okay? This is what the book says. Chase, to cut threads on a lathe, usually with a single edge cutting tool, as distinguished from cutting threads with a die. So to cut threads on a lathe, to chase a thread. So when, according to this dictionary here, when you are using a single point tool in a lathe, which is typically what you're using to cut a thread, we always call it single point threading, but according to the book, you can still call that chase. You're chasing a thread, even if you're cutting a new thread with a single point tool, that's still considered chasing a thread, but we like to use the term single point threading, okay? So it doesn't matter if you're cutting a new thread or you're cutting an existing thread because you're cleaning it up, you can call it chasing a thread if you're in the lathe using a single point tool, all right? So just after that is the chaser, which is what we were talking about. This guy right here, a geometric die head. These are thread chasers right here. A chaser is a thread cutting tool which is used in a die head for turret lathes and screw machines. So the way that these were typically used in industry for mass production is that these would be in some kind of turret lathe or some kind of production machine, where this was installed in the turret, and one of the operations was to use this to cut an OD thread, which would be thread chasing, using the thread chasers in a geometric die head. And I was planning on using this in one of that recent videos because I have dads, but the thread chasers that I have for that, the 3/4 inch, they have been reground several times and they just weren't right. I could not get them to cut a proper thread.
How many times do you think they've been reground?
I think they were reground 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
And they were ground so far that it just could not get back to the proper pitch diameter required for a 3/4 10 thread. And so those chasers just simply need to be recycled and a new set bought for it. That's what we need to do. So that's something that I need to find, is a new set of chasers for a 3/4 10 thread. And by the way, these geometric die heads come in a range of sizes. This particular one is called a 5/16. The one that I have of Dad's is a 3/4 inch, so it'll thread up to 3/4 inch in diameter. So anyway, I wanted to go over some more terminology that we have in the book here. So let me see what else I've got flagged in this book. I found it really interesting going through here and seeing, what does the industry experts call this kind of stuff,
Well, you always have something in your mind, like of what a definition is, because you just know it.
Yeah.
You don't know why you know it sometimes, you just know it.
Yeah.
But to hear the definition is always interesting.
Well, there's a couple here on this page that I wanted to read with you. So a die, we were just talking about a die, and maybe Abby can throw the picture up there so you can see it. A die is typically, most people think of a die as a round threading die. And it's split, and it has a screw that you can use adjustments, and it goes in a special tool with set screws to hold it for cutting external threads. And that's generally a hand operation. You're turning it by hand, usually. All right, so the next term is a die, D-I-E, one of a pair of hardened metal blocks or plates used to cut or form a required shape, a tool for cutting external threads. So a die has two terms in the shop. Like dies used for stamping metal, like think of auto fenders for a car, you know, auto parts, metal forming, that's a die. All right, and then also a cutting tool for cutting threads is also a die. So there's a lot of terminology that goes into each part of a die and what it's called, like the die cavity, the die clearance, die forging, die stamping, die casting is in here. But I wanted to work my way down to the die stock. The die stock is actually the handle in which you put the round die in that holds it so that you can turn it. Much like a tap wrench. A tap wrench goes on the end of a tap, you tighten it up on the tap and you turn it by hand. And I think it's easy to call a tool that's holding a die like a die handle, but it's actually called a die stock. That was something that I learned later on in my career. I didn't realize that it was called a die stock. But the term in here for die stock is a device used to hold threading dies, having two handles for turning the die on the work, parentheses, as when threading bolts by hand. So that's a die stock for you right there, not a die handle, but a die stock. So I would consider the tool that we were using in the flex arm could be like a die stock right there, but it's also just the tool, you know, a die tool that holds a die tool holder, if you will. All right, so I have a couple more flagged in here that I was going to mention because so we've been covering external threads. So the terminology kind of changes when you're cutting an external thread versus an internal thread. Usually when you're cutting an internal thread with a tool, a tool that's ground to cut that thread, those are called taps. I think most of us know now that is a tap, and I was going to read you what the term was for a tap. Tap, tool for cutting an internal screw thread to cut threads in a hole by use of a tap, parentheses. Tapping may be done either by hand or by machine. Taper, plug, and bottoming taps are three tools identified in thread and form and size, the only difference being in the chamfered portion of the point. They're also called a starter tap and a plug tap and a bottom tap. A taper tap is tapered for about 7 to 10 threads. A plug tap, which is sort of in the middle range of it, is tapered for about 3 to 5 threads. And the bottom tap is tapered for about 1 thread. So the taper tap is what you want to use to start a cutting threads in a hole. All right, it takes a lot less resistance. There's not as much pressure on it. Plug tap sort of fills the gap between the taper and the bottom. So you can use a plug tap to cut a thread in a hole. And if you don't need the threads to go absolutely to the bottom of the hole, you can use a plug tap for that as well. The bottom tap, the way it's designed is that it only has one thread that's got a bevel on it. So if you do need to make sure that the threads are cut all the way to the bottom as far as you can get them in a hole, you tap it with a plug tap and you pull that out and then you put your bottom tap in there and then run that down and then you'll feel it cutting those last few threads, getting it down as close to the bottom of the hole as you can. We're learning you stuff over here.
You sure are, yeah.
We're learning you, teaching you some nice things.
Yes.
But and of course this is supposed to be helpful for anyone out there learning the trades there as well. But that's what's cool about this this book is that there's just so many interesting. It's nice to see the definitive definition of what it is that we're talking about. you can go through here, and I just put my eyes on swage. Swage, to change the shape of a piece of metal by hammering, rolling, or otherwise forcing without cutting.
Interesting.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So we just covered a tap. So again, a tap is designed for internal threads. So if you're tapping a hole, that's because you're using a tap. If you're chasing some threads, you're using a thread chaser. Or on the lathe, that's an external thread. You don't chase an internal thread, you tap an internal thread. So there's different terms for the different processes that's going on.
That is a lot of terms in a very short amount of time.
Oh yeah, you're gonna have to pick up this book and read it whenever we're done. All right, we have one more here that I have flagged for the discussion, and this one is threading. And there's a lot of threading in here. I don't know if we need to read all of these, but we'll go over a couple of them. Threading, the cutting of screw threads.
Simple.
Yep. So you can consider what we were doing threading, and we were.
Yes.
So you can call it threading. When we were using the die, if you're using a geometric die head, you can call it threading. If you're running a tap in a hole, you can call it threading. So that kind of is the general term for all of it there. A threading tool is a lathe cutter bit ground to the profile of the thread to be cut, parentheses, chased.
Huh.
Chase the threads. So you see, you can still use chase even when you're cutting a new thread. It doesn't have to be cleaning up an existing thread. But I think most of us distinguish the term chase as picking up an existing thread and running the tool through it to clean the thread up.
Do you remember your dad like actually teaching this, or was it more like this is how you chase a thread? Like, was it more like that and then you learned?
I just remember Dad teaching me how to do it.
Yeah.
He taught me how to thread, and he taught me how to line up a thread with the tool.
Have you done that more than any other thing, do you think?
I've done a lot of threading, and I have picked up a lot of threads, existing threads in the lathe. And I have my own little system down that works really well for me on how I can pick up an existing thread.
It is amazing when you're doing the manual, when you're moving your process for like what your hands do.
Yeah.
When you're threading.
Yeah. I believe we touched on this a little bit in a previous episode. We keep mentioning this as I don't remember every single thing we've talked about in the previous episodes, but we did talk about single point threading in a lathe and how there's a couple different popular variations of doing that. And a lot of people give me a hard time because their way of doing it they think is superior than the way that I'm doing it. It all gets the job done.
How many actual ways is there to do it?
There's several.
Yeah.
But the two most common for the lathe is straight end feed and angular end feed. That's the two most common. I like angular end feed, and some other people like straight end feed. Now maybe some people's process for straight end feed is a little different than the way that I try to do it or the way that I understand that it's done. But angular end feed works well for me, and it's how I was taught, and it's how the machines are set up to thread. That's why I keep my the compound slide set at 29.5 degrees, is because it's set there for whenever I want to use the lathe to thread. It's already set. I'm not having to move the compound. It's just set for that. And anytime I need to use the compound to do an angle, I just change it to whatever angle I need to cut using that. But straight end feed, folks use the cross slide to feed the tool in whatever depth they want. So typically you start, whenever you have the tool touched off, you have your cross slide dial set to 0. And you also want to, when you touch off, set your compound slide dial to 0 as well. And then that way you know how deep you're going every cut. So straight end feed, people are feeding on your cross slide whatever depth they want. So just say 10 thousandths a pass. So they feed it in 10 thousandths, they engage the half nut, they cut it, they bring the tool out with the cross slide, they come down, they reset, and they come back in. What were we just at? We were at 10 thousandths? I think we were at 10 thousandths. I think we were, so let's go to 20 thousandths. All right, let's cut our thread. let's back it up. Let's bring it down to reset. Were we on 20 or were we on 25? I don't remember. I think we were on 20, so let's just go to 25. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
Whenever you're using straight end feed, you have to remember what number you started that last cut on. All right? And then maybe some people do. I don't want to have to remember. I want to remember one number, and that's 0.
Some people are probably better at remembering that than others.
So
yeah.
when I thread, I want to bring the cross slide back to a 0. Every time. That one goes right back to 0. And then when I want to feed the tool in, I'm using the compound slide to feed that tool in at 29.5 degrees, a little bit each time. So I don't have to keep track of where the depth is. It's just there. I make a pass. If I want to run the tool back through there again just to make a spring pass, I bring the cross slide back to 0. I don't adjust the compound, and I just engage the half nuts and I cut it again. Usually it shaves a little bit off each time you do that. So that's a little bit of an overview of compound end feed versus straight end feed, and the controversy that I didn't know existed until I started making YouTube videos.
Yes.
And I've tried to politely tell people, like, I don't want to argue with someone about that. And if that's the way that you do it and it makes sense and you get the job done and it works great, go for it.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not going to say anything about that.
No.
The difference is that people tell me that I'm doing my job wrong, and that's when it gets a little frustrating, because that's the way that I was taught how to do, and it works really well. I was going to add that some of the older lathes, like the Monarch lathe, they have a lock built in on the cross slide. So whenever you're adjusting your tool to get ready to start cutting your thread, you run the cross slide all the way into this hard stop. It's like a pin that sticks out, and it will not go any further than that. And once you get that stop set, you set your cross slide to a 0, and then you use your compound on the top for your end feed for your depth every time. So when you make a pass and you back out and you come down and reset the cut, you just run the cross slide into that hard stop, and it's going to be in the same place every single time. And then you just adjust the compound to take your pass each time. So there's a general overview of threading on the lathe right there as well. But to kind of like recap what we're saying is that there's a few different terms that you can use in the shop for threading. I usually consider threading in the lathe single point threading, but I found that really interesting that the book here calls it chasing a thread. And that kind of came about because I had quite a few guys saying, like, why are you calling it chasing? You're not cleaning up the thread. You're cutting a new thread, so it's not chasing. But according to this book, you can still consider it chasing, because industry deemed that chasing is threading in the lathe with a single point tool. But chasing really refers to the geometric die head when you're using chasers to cut a thread. But then again, you can still just call it thread cutting,
Do you think that people have actually tried both methods and like tested it to see how accurate they were? I mean, if you get it, you get it, right? I mean,
you mean the two different style of end feeds that we're
Right.
talking about? There's people that argue about the finish that you get as well, because depending on which process you're using, you will have more material being taken off of one side of the tool. And straight end feed, that's for angular end feed. When you do straight end feed, you have equal amounts of material that form tool is taken off. It's on both sides of the tool. And some people argue that you get better finishes that way. And I don't necessarily agree. I think you can, but if you're taking big heavy cuts, it's not gonna look any better. I just prefer angular end feed because it helps me line up on 0 every single time I recut.
it seems to me that the best practice really is what makes you feel the most confident. Because as I learn and see you work, you are so sure. You make a decision, and that's the decision. And I feel like that's more important in my eyes than maybe technique. And I understand everyone's still trying to get that exact thread pitch. I understand that, but I would think that confidence in your method would be a little bit more important than the actual method.
I think if you're getting great results and you're working efficiently, it doesn't matter what what process you use. If you're getting the job done and it's doing the job great, you're getting good results from it. Either process takes about the same amount of time. So that's what I mean. There's no point in really arguing there. It's really about what you're comfortable doing. And if you're comfortable with one or the other, then go for it. If one might be slowing you down, then maybe consider the other. I'd say try both methods. If you're somebody that likes to do straight in feed and you're not really taught how to use the angular in feed, give that a shot and see if that might help you. It works really well for me, and that's what I'm used to doing. That's the muscle memory that I have adapted because I've done a lot of threading, single point threading in the lathe. And that's what you were talking about there, watching me thread on the lathe. Once you get comfortable using a lathe to thread, single point thread, you start getting the muscle memory down of what you're having to do. You have to disengage. You have to disengage the half nuts. You have to retract the tool. And then you have to bring it back down, bring the tool back into your 0 point. Feed it in, engage the half nuts. But a lot of times you have to disengage because threading on the lathe is typically a manual operation. You can set some lathes up to automatically disengage. I've never run any of the lathes like that. The Monarch can do that. You can set a collar and whenever the carriage moves down, it pushes a rod in, which disengages it from threading. But I never found it convenient enough to actually do that because it's usually just one job that you're doing. If you were doing a repetitious job over and over and over,
That
yes,
makes tons of sense,
you would
yeah.
want to set up that automatic stop so that it just stops feeding every time. But you still have to back it up. And that's where you would have to have a thread relief in there for the tool so that when the cut stops, it's not digging into the shaft that you're threading there.
Threading. It's very interesting.
But I like it. I really enjoy it, and I've got a lot of videos. I have a playlist on the channel that's called Single Point Threading, and I have tried to add as many videos as I could remember to that playlist that covers single point threading. And several of those videos, I try to go in depth as well and try to share with the viewer what it is that I'm doing, reasons why I'm doing things, and just kind of overall showing the setup on the lathe that I use whenever you're single point threading.
Do you think that that's a difficult thing to learn?
I don't think it's difficult to learn. No, I think if you enjoy running the lathe and you want to be efficient at a lathe, then it's something that anyone should try. Because I think it's the proper way to machine threads when you're cutting a shaft, especially like a gearbox shaft or a hydraulic rod, anything that really needs to have some really good quality threads cut on it. That's what you want to single point those or chase them. You don't want to use a die. I've had a lot of people ask me, why would you not just use a die to thread something? If you've got a little bar, a little piece of rod stock that you need to cut, like those 3/4. If I only had just a couple of those to do, I would have just used the lathe and just cut them that way. Because, why not?
Yeah.
It'll get the job done. But I wanted to use a system more like this, that once this is set, you literally can cut these in a matter of seconds and be done with it. On the lathe, it's going to take longer. So going back to what I was saying about why not use a die. When you use a die, you're not going to get the same quality of thread that you're going to get as single point threading on a lathe. You get a lot cleaner thread because you can make multiple spring passes through there to clean it up. You can really dial it in nice and close. And when you use a tool like a chaser or a die, it's not going to have as clean looking threads, and you're also going to see the taper of the threads cut to the very beginning of the thread there as well. On a lathe, I always try to get it so that I can machine a thread relief, a little groove, if you will, so that when you're threading, the tool comes through and then you stop in that relief, that little cutout area. The thread stops right there, the tool stops, and you back up. I just think it makes for a more professional and cleaner part when you single point thread on the lathe. And to me, that is the proper way to do it whenever you're machining shafts. If you've got a lot of parts that you need to thread, like those 3/4 inch bars, for example, then yes, set up some kind of tool that you can come in there and thread and get that job done quickly and efficiently. You know what I mean? So it really kind of depends on the job, but because people ask why not use a thread chase, I think that it's a more professional job when you single point tool it. It gives you more professional results, a better looking part.
Do you think that where something doesn't have to be as precise, does that also, like if they're just doing a nut and it's, it's just something simple and it's not being held up by, it's not going into a machine, it's actually like has
Yeah.
a different function. Like, does that make you choose one over the other two?
I think if you're having to thread a bunch of parts, like for example, again, a bunch of rods. If somebody has a bunch of rods, it don't matter what diameter, 1/2 inch, 3/4, 1 inch, anything like that, and it's not really all that important to have a beautiful machined thread on there, then you obviously want to use something like a die head of some sort to cut the threads, because you're going to get the job done very quickly, which is the most important aspect of that. But these geometric die heads and a die nuts that you use, a round die, will cut the threads on the proper size. So it's not like you're cutting it too small or even too big. You have to get it adjusted, and then you're cutting on the proper thread pitch diameter required for that thread call out. But it's not gonna be as pretty or beautiful. And that also depends on the material too. If you're threading a bunch of brass, it's gonna look absolutely gorgeous with these guys right here. If you're cutting some little cold rolled rods, with a geometric, it's going to make a beautiful thread, especially if you're using some cutting oil. But I think it really determines the end use of the part. Like if you got a bunch of rods that need to be threaded and they're going to be buried in concrete in a construction site, then it really doesn't matter how beautiful they are.
Yeah.
If you've got a bunch of rods that you're threading for someone that's, let's just say it's going to be seen on a handrail in a really high-end build somewhere, then for me, as the machinist, as the shop making those parts, I'm going to want to cut those threads and make them look as beautiful as I can, because I want people to see that and appreciate the work that went into.
And not go, ew.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it just depends on the job, honestly.
Like some of the welding that we've seen.
Unfortunately, we have seen some bad welding and we've seen some beautiful welding.
Yes.
Yep.
The difference is amazing.
Yeah. But I think that weld qualities are getting better and better now. I think over the last 10 years, people are putting a little more effort into, let's make this as beautiful and as proper as we can. A welder takes pride in his work just like a machinist takes pride in his work there. And I appreciate it whenever I see a welder use their talent and create a beautiful weld. Not just a weld because it just needs to be welded. Who cares what it looks like?
Yeah.
No, you take pride in what you build and what you make. And so you want to make it that represents you. That work that you're doing represents you as well.
Agreed.
You want to be proud of it.
All right, so I wanted to ask, what is your biggest and your smallest tap wrench?
Ooh, tap wrenches.
Yeah, we all love tap wrenches.
I love tap wrenches. I've got a really great collection of tap wrenches over the years, and that's one of those things that I loved collecting and buying over the years, even before I ever started sharing that on YouTube videos. I had a love for them, and I used to be able to find them at the flea market a lot.
Are you gonna actually sell some of those? Or are you keeping every single one?
I'm just keeping them. There's
Yeah,
no reason
yeah.
to sell them.
Yeah.
It's a collection,
Yeah.
know. We can use them for, like in here, we can hang them on the wall. I love my tap wrenches. There's a lot of really great tap wrenches out there. And again, I have collect them like in antique stores. I've found a lot of them at flea markets and also swap meets, like the Florida Flywheelers swap meet, the Moultrie car show. I have found several out there, even some of my drill indexes shows like that. So any of those types of events that have lots of tools, vendors, set up with tools and things, you can find stuff like that there. But going into your question, my smallest is going to be, if I remember correctly, it's the Greenfield Tap and Die number 0.
Number 0.
It's a little small, but it's about that big. Actually, I'm mistaken. Starrett makes a smaller tap wrench, a very, very small one, and I don't remember.
Like how many? I was gonna say how many inches?
It's
Like
probably about 3 inches long.
Yeah.
At the most. It's got a screw on one end that tightens up the little square.
so that's a real
It's a
baby.
very small one. I don't remember the number, the catalog number offhand. What that is, I'll have to find that one, and we'll get a picture of it so you can see it. After the Starrett one is the Greenfield Tap and Die number 0, and I believe that was their smallest. They might have made a 00, so I may have to go dig through my tools and correct myself during this podcast here with photos anyway. But I think they might have made a 00, double aught. And if they did, that was the smallest one that I can recall.
Now I want to hold that in my hand.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll have to go find them.
Yeah.
Of course, when we did our little shopping, two nights of shopping, I wasn't thinking about the tap
No,
wrenches.
I don't think we have a single one in here.
We don't.
We're gonna have to add some.
Actually, I remember pulling one off the wall and thinking this might be a good one to hang in there, but we didn't really do anything for hanging tap wrenches in here, but we might.
All right. So what about the largest one that you own?
The largest one is also very interesting because that one is hard to find. Much harder to find than the little small guys. That is the Greenfield Tap and Die number 24 tap wrench. I had one. I have it. It was originally Dad's and Granddad's. And that tap wrench used to just sit underneath the big welding table. It was always down there. And all the years growing up, my earlier years in the shop, I never really paid a whole lot of attention to it. Until one day I just happened to, look at it. I looked at it really good. I'm like, man, this thing is huge. This is a big tap wrench compared to the ones that we used every single day when we were threading holes. And, I got to looking at it, and I discovered that it was Greenfield Tap and Die, and it was the number 24. And I just always thought, man, that is a really cool tool.
So how big is that one? Like, do you actually know what the sizing is?
Offhand, I do not. I'd have to reference one of our catalogs in here.
Mm-hmm.
We have a couple of Greenfield books in there, so I'd have to. We'll do that off camera.
Yes.
And get some sizing. I want to say that with the handle screwed in to the number 24 from end to end, it's 72 inches
Wow,
long.
that's awesome.
It's really a wrench that's designed for two people.
I was gonna say, yeah.
You ever seen the cartoons or a movie where the mules are like, walking in a circle, turning the thing in the middle? That's kind of what it's like.
Yeah.
And I've always wanted to get a big giant tap and get somebody to help me and tap a big hole in video, and I just never have done it. We're going to have to do that one day.
Were you just saying that you might want some mules?
Not exactly.
Oh, okay. I've always wanted a donkey for
Oh.
whatever reason. I don't know why.
I'm not there.
I
I'm not
know.
there yet. I can't say
He already
that
said no to the chickens and
Yeah.
it was a maybe to the goat. But we can't
Well,
just
they-
have one goat.
Well, they
so.
help keep your property clean.
That's right, right.
know?
So
They
you
eat all
can
the
see a
weeds.
function in that one.
Yeah.
All right, no mules.
But the Greenfield Tap and Die number 24, I bet some of you guys are going to try to look for it now, and you're going to see that they're pretty hard to find. Guys have found them on the channel because I have shown it many times in past videos on the channel, and then a few of the guys were lucky enough to find them and collect one, and I've got 2 of them now.
How much does it weigh?
I don't know. It's several. It's heavy.
Yeah, yeah.
It probably weighs 20 pounds if I had to guess, 25 pounds
Yeah.
maybe. But so I always had Dad's, and what was really great about the 24, and still is that you don't have to use the long handles in there. So if you have a large tool like a big tap or a big reamer, something that has the square shank, that you're just going to go through and you're just going to chase a thread. If you want to run a tap through an existing thread that just needs to be cleaned up, that's back to thread chasing. Mm-hmm. Or if you need to run a big reamer through a hole, you have to use one of those tools. You can use a wrench on there, but I don't recommend that. It needs to be like a tap wrench so that you do equal pressure on both sides, use both hands. But the wrench, the tap wrench without the bars, the handles in there, is really good for just bench work. When you just want to run a tap through a hole that's already, and you're not having to really force it, it's great for that. So I've also got the number 22, which was the next size down, so it's a little bit smaller. And that's how I always used it, was whenever I had a larger tap that I was trying to hand tap something, I would put that on there. And I actually made a little short handle for one side of it, because the other side of the tap wrench has the section that you tighten up and it sticks out further. So I could use that and have a wrench about this big and be able to use that to hold a larger tool in there. So they're really great tools to have, not just for a collection. They're still valid in the shop, especially an industrial repair shop, a manual machine shop. They're really great to have around for things like that. But I do have a really nice tap wrench collection, because a lot of those older tap wrenches that were made by Greenfield were color case hardened. So they had that really beautiful finish on the metal that everyone loves. As soon as you see it, that's one of the reasons why you love those old tap wrenches, because they had that beautiful color case hardening look on there. Like a lot of the old Starrett tools that were hardened, they have that same look, that color case hardened. And that's what kind of draws your eye to them, and you want to collect them, you know, in all sizes.
Do you think that that's a tool that really, really represents manual machining?
I think it does, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Anybody that's done a lot of manual mill work, where you're drilling and tapping holes in a mill, has done a lot of hand tapping. I've done it a lot, you know. So you drill a hole, and if you're not wanting to power tap, which is put the tap in the spindle and power tap, you know, usually you put some kind of spring-loaded center in the spindle. You put your tap wrench on the tap, and you run it down to hold the end of the tap, and then you're twisting the tap by hand using that tap wrench. I've done it in the mill a lot, even in the lathe a lot. And that's where having those short-handled, the number 22, it really benefits you if you're trying to run a tap in the bore on the lathe and you're using the tailstock to hold the cutter up. Having those short handles, but the size capacity to hold a nice size tap, you know, it's beneficial having that tool, because then you can do this and the handle is not coming around and hitting the ways of the lathe. It can actually clear, so you can swing it all the way through there.
Now I want to go do that.
We should.
I know.
I need to show you all this stuff on the lathe. It's pretty cool, but hopefully we'll get a few pictures of some of these tools for those watching the video. Abby has really been trying to go above and beyond when she's editing these videos to include a lot of helpful info to the viewers and see some of the stuff that we're referring to. And obviously you got to be watching the YouTube video to see this stuff.
And I'm going to admit, we are getting used to the podcast, because we're so used to video.
Yeah.
So you're talking in a totally different way, knowing that they can't see.
Yeah.
Some of these people can't see what you're actually holding
Right.
in your hand, you know. But a lot of you have been watching the videos, so we appreciate that. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's still getting some used to, taking time for us to get used to it.
Yeah. So, you know, I think that about wraps up the discussion on threading. Obviously, there's more to discuss if we need to, but I really just wanted to talk about, you know, thread chasing and OD threads, and list some of the different terminology that we could all learn from in this book right here.
Agreed.
We're all used to saying certain things and calling things a certain way. Absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, and do you think that it varies by country too?
I believe.
I know there's a lot of things that kind of cross over. But
I believe it does. Different countries do say things differently than other countries, and so I think yes, to answer your question.
It is interesting that for the most part, manual machining really is kind of, no matter where you are, you can learn it in the same way, other than the metric versus imperial. That's a whole nother podcast.
Yeah,
I have learned a lot about that conversation. We'll about
discuss
metric
that.
versus
We'll discuss that in another episode.
Yeah.
Metric versus imperial.
Yeah, I had no idea how big of an issue that it was, and I understand that now. I really do. It didn't come up much for me before.
Yeah.
So I was into sports before. I mean, I'm into sports still, but I did not learn machining. I learned sports when I was a kid. So anyway, all right. Well, let's move on.
Okay.
Because I feel like you did a great job talking about threading, and
Okay,
now I want to
great.
go do that.
Yeah.
And I definitely want to go look at tap wrenches before we leave.
All right. We'll do
But
that.
I wanted to hit on another one of our stories from the shop floor.
Awesome.
So we did get several emails. So, definitely please email me if you want to send some photos and a story about yourself. This one is actually going to be an Abom inspiration story.
Oh, really?
So I like that. Okay, so let's get into it. So this one is from Marty. He is a third generation machinist.
Really?
Yes.
Another third generation.
Can you believe that? In Washington State. And this is his Abom inspiration story. All right, so Marty says that he's been in the automotive machining industry all of his life, mainly doing custom automotive engines. He stumbled across Adam's YouTube channel about 10 years ago.
Okay.
He's only worked at his dad's shop and 2 other shops his whole life until 2004 when he purchased the shop that he was working for. They always had a lathe in the shop, but not a knee mill. So after he owned the business for a few years, he bought a nice mill, but he didn't know much about making parts on it or the tooling to do so.
Okay.
So he started watching YouTube, and that is when he found Abom79. And so he says, Adam has taught me so much in such a short time just by watching his videos. Marty has expanded his custom engine business to making one-off parts and repair/modification of parts for the boat racing industry. Totally cool.
Yeah.
I have never actually gone to see any boat racing. We've watched it on TV a lot, but I've never actually gone. So that's something I'd like to do.
The boat racing industry. That's interesting.
Right? So he's in the Pacific Northwest. I want to go there really bad. That is, again, at the top of our list. All right. So he does want to thank Adam for sharing the wealth of knowledge that he has. So thank you. And he says, he seems to teach me through his content in a way that I can relate to. He also has introduced him to other content creators that have helped tremendously, like Jason at Fireball Tools, Keith Finner, Mr. Pete, Keith Rucker, and Tom Lipton, just to name a few.
Awesome.
And obviously he's continuing to learn from those creators to this day. So he did send a couple of pictures of him and his boat racing, and there's some really cool engine parts. So, thank you a lot for the pictures. I love this. This is, I like that this one's not an old one. It's not an old shop. It's a new one. And I like that just as much. So, but anyway, he did say this very sweet thing, and I just wanted to say it. He says, here's a couple of pictures of my passion, and I feel there is a little Adam Booth in everything I make.
Oh, really?
Oh, is that not so sweet?
That is so cool.
So that is Marty from Blockhead Machine in Auburn, Washington.
Very cool. Well, Marty, thank you for sharing your story. And you have what sounds like an awesome business and an awesome service that you're providing with the custom or boat racing industry there. And Abby did share the photos with me, and we looked them over, and it looks like you've got an awesome shop.
Totally cool.
And how cool is it that you go into a business and you're going on YouTube and you're learning how to do some of this custom machine work to carry right over into your own business and do these jobs for customers.
That's right.
That is very cool. I'm a little surprised to hear that an automotive machine shop did not already have a knee mill in the shop. I don't know anything about engine shops, so I'm not trying to speak about things that I'm not really understanding all that well. But I would have thought that an automotive shop has a basic, like a Bridgeport, a knee mill, just to do basic operations. If you've got to drill a hole or modify a hole or tap a hole or mill something down. So I'm glad to hear that he had enough inspiration once he took over the business that he said, let's invest in an knee mill. We need one. And you can see that it's actually helped his business there. And that's really cool.
Yeah, it is cool.
So again, Marty, thank you for sharing your story with us. We really appreciate that.
Yes, thank you, Marty. And if you want to send your story and your photos, please email me. It's info@abom79.com. And I try to answer everybody that I can in at least a timely manner. So, but anyway, I really appreciate it. I did want to say that we did get a picture, and it is of a kitty watching our podcast.
How cool is that?
I'm gonna put the picture up on Instagram because it's just so sweet. So I'll put it in this video as well. So
that was a separate person that had emailed you, correct?
It was. It was.
They like watching the podcast, and the kitty likes watching the podcast.
Yes,
too.
and it is an actual picture of the kitty sitting there, and I love kitties a lot,
yeah.
so it's very cute. So, but anyway, thank you a lot for the email, and I appreciate the pictures and everything, and for your story, and
the stories from the shop floor is welcome anyone that wants to share an interesting story from the trades about yourself, your dad, your mom, or anybody that inspired you, or anyone that you think has a really great story to share out there on the podcast.
So the kitty's name is Foxy.
Foxy.
She's an orange tabby, and I think that is so cute. Anyway.
Yeah, those are cool cats.
Thank you for that picture. Any picture that you want to send that has a pet in it, please do. Just as a special treat for Abby. All right, well, I think that wraps up our podcast today.
Yeah, I agree. I think we've got a pretty good episode there for you to edit now and share. And we definitely want to keep these episodes going. We're enjoying it. We're enjoying the discussions. We're enjoying getting that feedback from everyone. So please let us know what you think of the podcast. If you have specific things that you think would be interesting to talk about in the podcast, let us know. Drop us a comment, and just let us know what you think overall.
Yeah, and I would definitely like to do an Ask Abom segment in this podcast. So if you guys have something specific that you want him to answer, info@abom79.com. Send it over to me, and I'll have him answer it. So
absolutely, I don't mind answering some questions and seeing if we can help clear the air some things.
Well, I hope everyone has the most wonderful week, and I think we're going to sign off.
All right, sounds good. Thank you for tuning in. Be sure to check us out on YouTube, Abom79, Abom Adventures on YouTube if you like that kind of stuff. Also over there on Instagram and Facebook as well.
And our merch for the podcast and for Booth Machine Shop and Abom79, those things can be found at abom79.com.
Right, and I was going to point out that Abby is slowly adding new shirt designs, even some of the classic shirt designs that we had previously. She is slowly trying to add those to the storefront so that you guys can purchase a shirt if you'd like to.
And we have told people about signing up for the mailing list if you're interested in knowing just the happenings in the shop, but also when we announce merchandise sales for his products. So if you go to the website at the very bottom of the page, you can sign up for our emails. So we'll be starting to send those out, I'm hoping, next week. So
awesome.
All right, well, that sounds awesome. Let's wrap this up.
We hope you guys enjoyed the episode, and we hope to have you back for the next one. We'll see you then.